spent some time yesterday just clearing out, so I'm left with something like this as a workspace. It's a completely different atmosphere in here. There's a kind of a, well, it's full of potential now, I think. I'm looking at the tendency for this paint to deposit when you have like a heavily loaded brush and you make a mark and all of this paint gathers and drops down. So looked at it on a smaller scale. I mean, you can see that there's a shadow cast here. So very simplistic at the moment. I'm just thinking if there's a way that it could be developed. These cardboard versions, I mean, they're very primal, it's very raw, but undeniably I find like the warmth of the cardboard with this white paint, I mean, it really does bring it forward. So I'm not sure if it could be worked up to something a bit more substantial. There's another version here that I worked on. It immediately reminded me of an artist called Roxy Payne. It looks like stacked material, but again, you get the same drop shadow here. I think this one has more than this one. I mean, this is, again, it's very sparse. There's not much happening, but I like this wave, this sort of outer edge here, this texture. Well, this is a similar idea, it's just stacked closer together. A little bit of cutting this morning. Just taking off some of these individual marks and assembling them over here. I'd just like to get a sense of the overlap, how this would read. You know, they lose some of that volume when they dry down. So I'd like to build up some layers using these kind of heavy strokes. I think you could develop a nice surface in this way. The first stage was really just to assemble, to cut and to assemble things. And the second stage, I'm actually going to just try some overlaying strokes directly on these. A few test pieces here. You see I just filled in the background here, just to sort of give the focus to these objects, as I'm calling them, these strokes. So it's quite light, yeah, it's quite energetic. Similar idea here. So just by taking the white out of the page, you're giving emphasis to these kind of sculptural marks here. So still very interested in this. Did a second layer here, and now, well, I like these sort of deposits. I'm not really into this where you get this sort of transparency here. It detracts from the sort of object nature of these pieces. So then I thought, well, perhaps I need to do it all in one pass. So perhaps this is not something that I could layer. So I did a nice piece over here, and it's really, really interesting. It's, yeah, I think I like it. You get this sort of overlap thing going on. It has a lot of movement, a lot of life. So I think this is something I'm going to develop. And tried one on color. Now, I like the one on color, but I've let it go too much. I mean, there's too much interference. This is something that I'd be more interested in, where you get this, nothing kind of comes down too much. Some really nice lines and some energy here. So beautiful, beautiful stuff. I think taking this one and sort of trying to develop around that idea has brought up some good results here. Kind of moving into more colorful work, and I think I'm going to try a scaled up version. Looking at the dry down this morning on these colored pieces, and it's quite significant. The lines are very elegant, but it's just dried down so much, like it's so thin, such a thin coating. I did a few more tests this morning. Again, yeah, so I'm quite interested in these lines insofar as these sort of organic movements here. But yeah, still sitting with that one. So the task now is it's back to mixing, and it's creating a mixture of paint that has enough body that is in the fluid state. It can be controlled the way I need it to be. And then when it dries down, it doesn't completely lose all of this body. So yeah, that's back to the drawing board in terms of mixing paint. I have a few ideas, a few additives I could use. So I think I got a very strong result here. Basically I just did a small batch test here, just using white. increase the body of the paint, and this is quite something. So to clarify, I'm looking at this overlapping of material, one layer to the next, creates this very elegant organic line. This version I have used no pigment, I've just used white paint. That is incredible, I think. Look at the shadows, like it's just, oh my god, something else. Yeah, I think it's pretty incredible. Ideally, what's going to happen here, I mean, this is absolutely the first test, so there's definitely some adjustment, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up different colors here for each layer, for each level. You see this line, see this organic curve here, I think is beautiful. Gets a bit messy here, but like, just look at this line here. You know, that's the kind of thing I'm looking for. Whereas, looking at this one, it's just too much, it's a bit too erratic. I mean, it has its own beauty, but it is too erratic. Meanwhile, over at this one, still, I mean, the same principle, very organic line here. Just need to give some body to this paint. So that's an incredible discovery for today. So now my mind is sort of like jumping ahead, and if I need to sit down, I need to plan a batch of materials. I think this is going to be something excellent. Very focused work today. It's sort of interesting to see how you can become so involved with just a single brush stroke. It's very zen-like. The simplicity of this one, I think, is very, very appealing. I mean, just look at the shadow and the highlight. I think that's something else. And then, of course, this one I just let it go for longer, and you get that elegant line again. Another one here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to try a version with overlaying colors that without transparency, so it should come up quite clean, this line. It'll take a little bit of time. I need to let it dry between each layer. So but again, I think when you're working on something like this, it really kind of pulls you into the present moment. It's an exercise in being present and being centered. I just did a few of those pieces. Rather than single color like this, I used different layers. You see those little shadows there? I think that's what makes it. Very, very calm, methodical morning here. And I feel like it's good exercise, good practice for the mind to sort of come right down and focus in. I feel like I've kind of furthered this idea a little bit more, and I'm just thinking about what I could do with it now, or how to find the next level for it. So yeah, very good. Dated a lot of the studies from this week, and just going to archive them and again clear everything down. So variations of this theme here, monochromatic. So it's inject color, looked at the form a little bit, tried to find the edge of this language, put these together, and then it was something like this, which I quite like. I mean, again, I love those little shadows and highlights. This for me represents something that I'm looking forward to developing. I mean, the materiality, like the weight of this, I think is quite special for development. There were some other kind of offshoots, which often happens, and I just set them aside over here. It gave rise to this kind of a language, I suppose. So I just developed it a little bit here. Same here, the language disintegrated, and then this one is a bit too unclear here, but quite like this, and this of course too, and the third one. So I had a phone call from my gallery. They've confirmed a commission. It's for a clay piece, it's a sculptural piece. So I had to run and get some materials just to get working on that. I also prepared a batch of paint here, so to continue looking at this sort of sculptural effect. The key is going to be how these are used. It's incredibly sculptural, you know. I'm very, very happy with the way this works. Now there was also a blue one, but as you can see, it's like the toast. It fell, of course, and it fell heavy side down, so obviously it's not usable, but at least I could see that these shadows were in place. I mean, it was working otherwise. The key is going to be how to combine these materials and how to combine it to make a whole. So, but as a material test, I think, yeah, this is great. I mean, look at how this kind of holds these forms, I think. So this is something to move forward on. I've really taken to this archival process and to, you know, clearing everything out, sign it or date it and put it in a box, you know, fresh canvas again. It seems to work better with my nature. I feel much more at peace with a longer term view of this process. I mean, as it is now, it sort of prevents this kind of build up of materials and of ideas. It's a constant processing, like a constant drip, rather than this sort of like torrent or this like sudden, like the dam bursts open. So I think overall it suits me better. I spoke to an artist this week as well, to a French artist. Yeah, hopefully we can collaborate in the future on something. I'm still thinking about different ways to collaborate with artists, whether it's a dialogue or a project or something like this. So it's in the back burner there somewhere. Yeah, so that's it. I'm going to leave it there. So take care of your mind, and I'll talk to you next week.